Welcome back to another reading and correcting with me, Kindar, the Tiger Writes, and Ty, the Tiger Supervisor. These are where I read a chapter from one of my stories and correct it as I go. If you want to listen to these live, it's every Tuesday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern Time on Twitch. And if you are looking to support me, that is on my Patreon. Today, we are doing chapter 43 of, of Breaking Step. That's the hero? A young man a few years older than Lamberto sneered as he stepped forward. He's so small. He was as as more he was as more he was more than a head taller than Lamberto, and broader in the way that said fighter to Tibs. His jacket was fine leather, red, with gold and black trim, and emeralds adorning it. His element was water, and like Lamberto, he was barely Upsilon. Three others stood behind him in such a way that they could be a runner team, with the fighter as their leader. The woman wore sorcerer's golden robes that match her eyes, with black trim. The men on her left had metal as his element, but with so many spots of darkness than so many more. Okay, so many more spots of darkness than the others in the room. Tibbs would trust him even less than them. The one on her right had light. They and Lamberto shared dirty blonde as the color of their hair. Paladin, Lamberto said in a chastising tone. It isn't the size of someone that determines their valor. Paladin gave Lamberto an amused look. And isn't that fortunate for you? The three others, who were closer in height to the fighter, shared a chuckle, while the adults looked on. Great. This is going to be used in nobles validating their egos. I heard you burned down part of the city, the metal user said, his gaze calculating. Look at my eyes. Tibbs replied sharply before he thought better of it. He was supposed to be nice to them. Not that nobles would ever make that easy on him. The men snorted. There's other ways to burn things down, the man said in a tone that implied experience with that. How does a boy like you claim the title of hero? The sorcerer asked in a snide tone. Let alone of the dungeon. She looked at the light user. How does one become the hero to a dungeon? Why would anyone want that? It's savior, Gabriel, he replied, but I wonder the same. Why would anyone save one of those things? So we can train? Lamberto stated. Do you want to go through life barely improving? That's what's going to happen without a dungeon. That's what the guild wants us to think, the man replied. So they'll continue to lord them over us. We shouldn't be paying them for the honor of training here. They should beg us for the honor. They should beg us to honor them with our present. They're just. Perhaps you should be mindful of what you say about our hosts, Carlan. A man dressed in gray said, joining them, when in the presence of their representative. Okay, actually. When in the presence of their representative. He was the Epsilon user, Tibbs had sense. He bowed to Tibbs. I am Theodore Galdane. I bid you welcome to my new home and pray you'll forgive my children. The need to move has been a strain on them. I'm sure it has, Tibbs replied as neutrally as he could. There was no light on the man's words, so the need was real. And why, father? Paladin said, did the guild send him instead of someone meaningful? Because he'll be taking us to the dungeon, Lamberto excitedly exclaimed joyfully. Paladin looked at his father. Is he serious? Yes. Your brother was quite enamored with the idea after that bard's songs. You agreed with something the lamb suggested? The tone made it clear he doubted the wisdom in that. Lamberto bristled at the nickname, and Tib's mood darkened at the idea there was a bard out there singing about him. Tibbs's team is among the few original ones still around, and beyond the title he gained from saving the dungeon and protecting the city, he was the first to unlock the door to the second floor, as well as discover the shortcut that lets the runners bypass the floors they have already mastered. So yes, I believe Tibbs is a good choice. Paladin murmured something as he walked away. I'm doomed to linger in obscurity. Ignore him, Lamberto said. He wouldn't know a good thing if someone slipped it into his purse. Our runs are going to be great. I just know it. That's the spirit, Theodore said, smiling. And with Tibbs to guide you, you'll all be Epsilon in no time. If he's so good, Gabrielle mocked, why is he still here? Shouldn't he be Epsilon already and out there, making himself the hero of some other city? Maybe saving other dungeons? Didn't you listen to the bard? Lamberto replied, offended. Tibbs had to work harder than anyone to get where he is. He started without essence. We all do, the metal user replied, rolling his eyes. While the numbers of secret he harbored made Tibbs want to say he was a rogue, Lamberto's use of the expression made that more likely. Although there were 5 of them, so they could both have the same class. No, Lamberto insisted. Even once he had his element, he didn't get any essence. His eyes didn't change color. He had to survive his runs with nothing but his wit and skills. And his team, Tibbs wanted to correct, but Gabrielle was faster. You've been lied to, Lamb, again. You should know better than to listen to bards. As soon as we get our elements, our eyes change, and you have essence to wield. Tell her, Lamberto ordered Tibbs. Tibbs struggled to stay silent and in place. The outside called to him, the roofs, where he'd be away from all these people and their posturings, of that boy using him to make himself important, using Tibbs for his entertainment. Gabriel, Carlin, and their father watched him attentively. The metal user shoved the crowd out of his way. No, not a rogue. Brutish enough to be a fighter. I'm told, Tibbs said, barely managing not to grit his teeth, that I'm the youngest runner to survive the dungeon and get his element. He was careful in the words he used. He doubted Carlin knew enough to tell when someone lied, but he also didn't want to sound like it was something he claimed for himself. He had to talk with one of the light runners and find out when they learned to see lies. Because of that, my eyes didn't change color when I returned from my audience with water. I did have essence, but my reserve was so small I could barely do anything with it. Lamberto straightened and puffed his chest, as if he'd accomplished some impossible task in getting Tibbs to say this much. Carlin smirked. You want a copper for that story? He looked at his father. Really? You're saddling us with that because Lamb's infatuated with a bard story? He's lying to make himself feel important. I didn't lie, Tibbs said through gritted teeth. Let me tell you something you clearly don't know, Carlin said, stepping closer, shoulder rigid. My element's light. You can't lie to me. Lies shine bright, and right now your words are blinding me. More like yours are, Tibbs replied, and smiled at this noble stiffened. Our previous guard leader had light as his element. Plenty of people lied to him. I did it a time or two. He's Gamma. Are you even Upsilon? Don't you? Caroline raised his hand, but his father caught it. I will not have you hit a guest and tarnish my name. He glared at his son. I taught you better. Yes, father. Carlin glared at Tibbs. If his father took notice, he didn't care. When he released the hand, Carlin turned, and the crowd parted before he had to push them out of his way. Theodore faced Tibbs after watching his son disappear. While he brought it on himself, I'd appreciate it if you refrain from baiting my children. They aren't the hardened runners that you are yet. They require a more measured handling. Father, Lamberto whined, we're not children anymore. I don't need Tibbs holding my hand. Good, Tibbs thought, because he might not be able to resist using it to throw that boy to the rats in the boulder room. Tibbs will do what is needed to ensure you survive, his father stated. If that means holding your hand, then you will let him. Is that clear? Yes, father, Lamberto replied meekly. The man looked at the close-by crowd. All right, let's get back to enjoying ourselves. Tibbs will answer questions while he mingles. Gabrielle rolled her eyes and disappeared into the crowd smoothly enough. Tibbs might think she was a rogue, if not for her robes. Come on, Lamberto said, his father chastising seemingly forgotten. I want I want to introduce you to my friends. He reached for Tibbs's arm, but stopped, then walked to a cluster of young people. Reluctantly, Tibbs followed, and the group turned once they noticed the young noble. Lamberto gave names, but Tibbs didn't hear them. He was busy controlling his anger at the judgmental looks they were giving him. He knew he shouldn't care. Noble's opinion meant nothing to him, but they weren't much older than he was and looked at him as if he knew nothing of the world. Show us what you can do, Lamberto instructed, with your element. Tibbs wavered between snapping at the tone and figuring out what the boy could mean. Henley doesn't believe you have an element, Lamberto indicated a man Tibbs could only describe as mousy, although the predatory expression was more that of a rat. Look at him, the rat said, his voice high-pitched. Townspeople like him don't get element. They don't have the fortitude for it. Says the boy without one for it. One says the boy without one himself. Tibbs controlled his anger yet again. He wasn't here to perform feats. He was here to make a good impression on the nobles for Tirania, which meant keeping Lamberto happy, and that meant... He gritted his teeth and extended his hand, moving water over it. Ratty snorted. So your hand's wet, as if that wasn't a demonstration of what that Tibbs indeed had an element, since the boy was too blind to look at his eyes. Would a nice sword through the chest be enough of a demonstration? He turned his hand over and pooled the water in his palm. He shaped it into a ball, then lowered his hand, leaving the ball where it was until it floated over it. He smirked at this gasp of surprise. He moved his hand out from under it, and the ball fell. Before it hit the floor, he absorbed it. He almost rolled his eyes at the surprised expression, but those were quickly covered up with angry and suspicious look, like he'd conned them and had just now caught on to it. Is that all you can do? A woman asked, and Tibbs spun. She was tall and looked down at him with a disinterested expression that belied the question. I mean, the way you are, they say you are some hero. Do heroes only play with water? Tibbs flicked his hand up and iced the water as it flew out of his finger and cut the jagged knife. An eyebrow went up. An eyebrow went up lazily. An eyebrow went lazily up. How impressive. Yes, it seemed it would take something sharp planted in a noble's body before they understood what he was capable of. Can you make a sculpture? A man asked. I'd love to see myself made of ice. Tibbs turned. Tibbs could turn the man into ice, the way he'd done with Sebastian, piece by piece. Ice cracked, with a lot of water turned into that. If he filled the man with that first, would he shatter without Tibbs having to do anything? Tibbs a runner, Lamberto said, sounding offended, not an artist. Why, yes, of course, the noble said, amused. How silly of me. Tibbs fought the urge to tell Lamberto to mind his own business. Tibbs was more than capable of dealing with that man himself. Theo, can I bother a servant for a large plate? I would like to see a demonstration of this, he considered Tibbs, young man's ability. He will require a target. That is a splendid idea. Theodore motioned to a servant, and they brought a silver plate close to half Tibbs's height. Then two servants held it between them on the other side of the room, facing Tibbs. Do you think you can hit that? The man asked with a condescending smile. Tibbs confirmed no one had hair as their element in the room and flung a water without looking. He shaped it into a blade as it flew, using air to keep it on target. Now was not the time to let his poor aim ruin this, and iced it just before it pierced the plate, stopping at the guard. The plate's reverberation sounded in the silence room. The noble looked from the target to Tibs. Yes, I suppose that was something of an easy target, the men said in a dubious tone. Theo, do we have anything more appropriate for this young man's clearly superior skill? How about this? Someone called out while Tibbs fought not to glare at the man. The noble motioned for Tibbs to act. He let out a breath and looked at the plate held above the crowd. Tyrannia owed him for putting up with us. He'd get her to remove Dawn from his team as payment. He made a thin knife and etched an X attack. He channeled the smallest amount of essence through it and made the jet of water flung the plate out of the man's hand. Do it again, Lamberto exclaimed, grinning. He rolled the eyes. With a roll of the eyes, Tibbs looked around the room as people raised plates and goblets. 3X etching in succession sent 3 plate clattering away. 1 goblet he hit with an etching with Fey in the filigree so that when it hit, the water hardened around it and sent it flying. Before that hit the wall, he etched a whip and added boar to Fey in the filigree. When hit the goblet, the water stuck to the other Holy cow! Okay, I need to rework that. As it said, before that hit the. Okay, what do I? What I have? Okay. Looked around as people raised plates and goblets. Okay, so I've established there's more than 1 goblet being raised. 3X sent 3 plates clattering. 1 goblet he hit with the etching with Fey. And that's before that hit the wall. Okay, before that hit the wall, he targeted another one with an etched whip. Adding boar to Fey, adding boar to Fey in the filigree. When it hit, he targeted another one. When it hit the goblet, the water stuck. The water stuck. The water stuck, and Tibbs pulled on the whip, sending it flying back at him. The water hit his hand and kept going while he held the goblet. There was silence. Then applause. And that concludes chapter 43 of Breaking Step. If you are enjoying this, please leave a like. If you want to know when the next one will be up, subscribe and hit the bell. If you want to read the story, it is up for free on Royal Road. If you want to support me and read ahead of that, that is on my Patreon. And if you want to listen to these live, it's every Tuesday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern Time on Twitch. The links are in the notes, and with that, I shall wish you a good day.